we really talked during the election how really bad St. Thomas Transit was. It runs currently still 6 days a week from morning till about 6:30 at night. It's not convenient for almost anybody except for during those periods of time. And so we talked a lot about how we could expand it, how we could make it so that it is all day long and on Sundays, Sunday being the second or third busiest day of the week now for most people trying to use transit to get either to church, to work, to shop. So that's where we stand. The province has been great with also talking about rural communities and small communities like us about transit, providing us some funding. We're currently studying. We currently have a survey out, a transit survey out. If you would like, go to www.stthomas.ca and hit transit survey, and please give us your thoughts. I recognize it's a pretty basic survey because we don't have a lot to brag about right now with transit. So we're talking about moving that forward in 2019, this year, making sure that we can make our transit, transit that can be proud of in a community of 40,000 plus. So we know we can do it. In addition to that, we've had a lot of conversation about regional transit with the provincial government, our neighboring communities, Southwold, Central Elgin, and with London. Mayor Ed and I have talked a lot about how we can reestablish a connection between London and St. Thomas, a run all day, every day, or at least 5 days a week, whichever we can get to, just straight St. Thomas to London, to St. Thomas to London, to St. Thomas to London, to let people get to London and connect with London Transit and let London people come to St. Thomas. Those that live in London and work, and there's a great number of them, could take the transit and come here and go to work using St. Thomas Transit. So transferability on each end of it will really work. Park and ride situations on each end of it will really work too. So those are the two main pieces of transit, and they're really coming together much faster than I thought we would be able to. Transit can be very expensive. It's not usually user paid. The fares on transit don't pay for all of transit. And so we have to have cooperation with the provincial government to help us do this in St. Thomas. They've come to the table in a great way, and now we're just laying it out and trying to hear from our constituents as to how to make it work. You know, if we can connect, and this is what Mayor Holder and I have talked about now, is here to White Oaks. At White Oaks, you can connect anywhere in London. So if you're a Fanshawe student, for example, you can't get to Fanshawe College from here without a $40 cab ride, a parent, or owning your own car. All very expensive pieces, or in some cases, leave home, go live at a residence near Fanshawe College. We don't want to have to rip our families apart to make this work. We can have an hourly bus from St. Thomas to London that connects with transit. Is it hard? Sure, it's hard. You'll have to then take another bus in London and get there, or a bus up to the university, or a bus to your health care appointments. But it will connect and it will make it work. We need to make this smoother to live in St. Thomas and work and play in London, or live in London and work and play in St. Thomas. We can do both and it will work. Yeah, let's talk about the housing crisis in St. Thomas. We have zero vacancy. We might as well call it that. Someone looking for a rental apartment in St. Thomas right now is shut out, without a connection, without a prior knowledge of someone leaving an apartment. It just is not available. Our homes for sale are sold before they're finished being built. Our resale homes are sold within days of them being listed. This is what we call a housing crisis. Now, for those that can afford it, they can manage the system and make it work. But those that can't, the Scott Street School development finished. Thank you, way to go. 37 units of at least lower market rent apartments, 37 units of bachelor units of on just over 200 square feet, not luxurious apartments, but good new housing. 37 units, 500 people applied for them. That tells us 500 people in St. Thomas thought that was better than what they currently have. That's amazing. It tells us that our shortage, our market rent shortage and affordable housing shortage, is in the 1,500 to 2,000 units. We must build. We haven't really built much in the last 5 to 10 years. Now the city can say it's our fault. We have to provide planning. The land is there. We have land available in our community. We have to find owners of that land that want to develop it for market rent situations. I couldn't write a better business plan than what I just said. There's zero vacancy and the rates continue to climb. If you have land and want to build an apartment building in this community, our planning department is going to help you and you're going to make money at the end of the day. We've had the Alma College project on the go now for a number of years in different, with 2 different owners. Where we stand right now is we're waiting for the Ontario government to approve that land. 300 units will be built on that land in what the current builder is saying is in 3 phases. I'd like them to do all 3 phases at one time and get it done. We need the housing. I think they'll discover that also. And we need a number of other builders in our community to come forward and build market rent housing. We have to also, there's a number of other ways we can address it, but we've got to take a lot of our single family homes and turn them into multi-unit apartments to A, get affordability, but B, also get a lot more rental units. It's going to have to be that way. We're looking at some other fantastic things. I know we've talked about whether it's tiny homes or more remodeling downtown of upper floors or even main floor residential. There's about 50 things we can do for housing, and if we sat and talked long enough, we'd come up with 100. But we've got to start. We've just got to keep going. Another main thing is we currently don't have a men's shelter. We don't have a shelter in our community. In Out of the Cold does fantastic work all winter long. But come April 15th, it closes. And we just don't have, YWCA does a great job with homelessness for women. We need to be able to come up with 25-unit shelter for, we're a big enough community now. We're no longer a little town. We're a 40,000 population city, and we should have a shelter of our own to make that work. I'm currently having great conversations with a lot of the service clubs, churches, just about anybody who will have a meeting with the mayor to say, how can we work together? This is not one person's project. This is 50 people's project making that work. We can solve the housing crisis. We'll never not have a need for more housing, but we can solve this by this term of council really getting some great projects started and keep going. In the future, what we can't do is ever take a rest like we just did and not build anything for a number of years or not have people building. If it takes us out prodding, shopping for people who want to build this type of project in St. Thomas, then we'll continue to do that. That's the role the city can play. The city doesn't truly build housing. The city causes housing to be built. Next week, we've got a number of things coming up over the next couple of weeks here in St. Thomas and the next couple of months. Our outdoor recreational complex is really starting to come on stream, and if you've driven up Burwell Road, we can be very proud of what we're going to end up there with. More soccer fields than you can count, and a really great looking recreational complex. Again, moving our city into modern times. We recognize what else we have to have, and we continue to also look at expansion of the city. That's one of the things we said we needed to do. We're now looking at also a new settlement study for the west side of St. Thomas, jumping over Kettle Creek into some vacant property. It's not vacant; it's got farms on it right now, but and vacant land. But we have to look at, from a community, how do we service it? How do we get water and sewer capacity out there, power out there? Where would we put schools? What would we do with fire halls? So we're in that current study, and that will take place. It's already underway, and we'll finish up in about September, telling council what are our next steps. How fast can we move? What can we do next? St. Thomas continues to grow. We expect it to be about 2,000 people a year, and we're at 40,000. I expect 50,000 by the end of the decade. The end of the next decade. So we've got to be able to have that capacity. So council is seized with that type of study, but that's why we're studying transit, studying our growth, studying our parks and rec. None of this happens in isolation. It all has to happen at the same time. You can't all of a sudden find wow, we've put all sorts of people out there, but they can't get to a library, or there isn't a fire department or a firehouse covering them. So we have to make sure we study all of this at the same time. We've also been doing some really other unique things, building our own social service building downtown. Social service offices on the main floor in an area that's close to those in need, I suppose, is a great way to look at it. But the second and third floors of affordable housing, because the city can help and can build. And so we're putting a number of people on the ground, a number of people working and living in the west end of downtown St. Thomas, where those businesses will be very thankful to see that type of growth, to have customers brought to them, if you will. We can revitalize our downtown and continue to revitalize our downtown. You know, as we all know, there's been a number of great new businesses in the last couple of months. Let's keep that going by putting people on the street downtown, putting people living above stores downtown and above our own offices downtown. And even better than that, let's put people working downtown so they have to live, work, and play in downtown St. Thomas. It will be a far better place as we do this.